the time you sleep determines what you have control over. Let me talk about that because I've noticed this very interesting distinction between waking up early and like really early, from some like 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. and joining the 5 a.m. club like Robin Sharma and whatnot. And then there's just like waking up at like 10 a.m. and then like going to bed at like 2 a.m. And I've noticed there's different advantages and disadvantages with both. So for a while I had a job where I had to stay up like really late, like where I would be going to bed at like 4. And eventually I wanted to have a lifestyle where I could go out late at night. So I just changed my sleep schedule to be at 2 a.m. And that's the sleep schedule I've been operating on, waking up at 10 a.m. and going to sleep at 2 a.m. And, or like before, like to be sleeping by 2 a.m., right? And one thing I've noticed, because I've done both now, like where I've had a late schedule and I've had like the 5 a.m. routine and whatnot, I understand like, okay, so when you wake up early, you're going to be awake beyond everybody else. And that creates a huge advantage because if you're like most people, other people are trying to take your time, right? Other people are going to be needing you for whatever. You need to go to work, all that stuff, right? And that's great. And also waking up early, for a lot of people is very difficult. And in reality, when I've actually done it, if you just go to bed on time, waking up early is not difficult at all. It's just waking up at a different time. Like, that's really it. In my opinion, of course. But what I notice is what you gain when you wake up early is, that control. And that's, for most people, that's what they need because they go to work later, right? But if you're self-employed or just not working at all for a while, where you have the entire day to yourself, you can, a lot of different ways of being open up to you, right? And so for me, right now, I'm just living, working on my book, working on growing myself every day and not going to any work at all. And one thing I've noticed is that all I had to do to get that to work was just setting boundaries with people. Like setting boundaries with people, being like, look, you don't have my time until like 6 p.m. or whatever, right? I do my morning routine, I do XYZ. And what I found too is that ends up working a lot better in the just with my situation. I have people in my life I see, and we will talk and chat late at night, right? And if I had like a 5 a.m. schedule, I would have to miss out on that to get to bed on time, right? And so what I've noticed though is when I go to bed like later than everybody else, I have that time to myself, just like you have in the morning. I have that time to myself to actually focus on getting to bed on time. I think a large thing people struggle with is just getting to bed on time. This has surely been a mega fucking huge problem for me for over a decade, for my entire life. And I can fucking write a book I can write an almanac on how to fuck to get to bed on time, because I had such a rat's nest of issues that I had to resolve. And but what I'm trying to say here is, one thing that will deter us from getting to bed on time is just everybody else being up, right? Everybody else pulling your attention, like, oh, look at this cool thing, or let's talk for a little longer, right? But if you're the one that goes to bed last, then you can effectively, every time, you can effectively get to bed on time without fail, because there's no other distractions. And that's if you can set your boundaries with your technology properly. And that's if you can set your boundaries with yourself to actually follow through, such that like when your bedtime alarm rings, you actually drop whatever you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're in the middle of a movie, watching a movie on Netflix or whatever. It doesn't matter what you're doing, right? Being able to respect that, right? And so I've noticed that if you go to bed later, you're going to have a much easier time with getting enough sleep because you can control your bedtime. Whereas if you wake up earlier, you're going to have a much easier time with controlling your morning routine, You're going to have a much easier time with controlling your time, right? So this is something to consider. Eventually I'll probably swing back and create a life where I'm waking up at like 3 a.m. or whatever the fuck. Just so I can have all that time for myself, because there's something huge when it comes to you waking up that early when everyone else is asleep. That's like, that act alone is like making a vow that like this time is so important, I'm going to be intentional and use it. And that's where like waking up early can be so great for so many people, simply because what the fuck else are you going to be doing at 3 a.m., 5 a.m.? Like, you better be up for something important. You better be putting that time towards something important. You're not just gonna wake up at 5 a.m. to fire up some fucking video game. Unless you're like mega committed playing Ark Survival. But you know what I mean. It's funny because I did that. I remember playing Ark, and like, yeah, just crazy waste of time. So, yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about this because that's one thing I've noticed, where it's harder to go to bed when you have an early wake up time. Yet when you have an early wake up time, it's easier to follow through your routines. But if you have a good skill and if your life allows you, such that you don't have work later or whatnot, having a later wake up time is actually better, because if you can silo and like tell people to fuck off until like all your work is done for that day, then that could actually work a little bit better for you. You can increase connections with other people. You can have time to even go out late at night. And then when you go to sleep last, supposedly, if everyone goes to bed at a better hour than 2 a.m., where, they go to bed at like 10 to 11, 12, whatever, you have that control to actually have that time for yourself to wind down and to make sure you get enough sleep for the next day. But that also requires discipline, right? But yeah, that's about it for this one. I just wanted to talk about a little bit about this idea that I had, things I've noticed with differences between having an early sleep schedule and having a late sleep schedule. So, yeah, that's about it. Thanks for watching. Peace out.